Welcome to the City of Kingman City Council meeting at 5 p.m. on Tuesday, February 2nd, 2021. Could we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Miles?
Present.
Vice Mayor Watkins?
Present.
Councilmember Mello?
Here.
Councilmember Nelson? Councilmember Samily?
Present.
Councilmember Scott Staley?
Present.
Councilmember Walker? We have a quorum.
Thank you. Tonight, the invocation will be given by Pastor Lewandowski, Pastor Lewandowski from Hope City Church. Please stand and join me for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting me to join with you. It's an honor to be with you tonight as we bow our heads in prayer. Lord, we just come before you this evening, and I thank you for every member that is present in this meeting tonight, God. I thank you for our mayor and every city council member. Lord, I just pray a special blessing be upon them. I thank you that you have brought them to this moment in this season to lead our city. God, I pray an overwhelming strength and an extra endurance, an ability to lead through these uncertain and tough times. Lord, that you would give them the guidance and wisdom as they make decisions. Lord, that you would surround them and protect them. God, we also thank you for the city that we are in. It is a great city. It's just an honor to be a part of this city. And Lord, I just pray that you would protect it, that you would protect every member of our city. Lord, that you would bring your hand of healing over those that are struggling with the coronavirus. God, we just ask that you would protect all of our healthcare workers, all of our city workers, God, all of our schools, that you would bring a healing across our land. Lord, we love you and we give you the honor and the glory. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to our nation's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This council may go into executive session for legal counsel in accordance with ARS 38-431-0383 to discuss any agenda item. The following items may be discussed, considered, and decisions made relating thereto. Our first order of business tonight will be appointments. And the first is appointments to the Economic Development Advisory Commission. Currently, there are 2 vacancies on the Economic Development Advisory Commission, 2 terms ended December 31st, 2020. We currently have 2 applications for council's consideration from Steve LeSueur and Jason Davis. 2 applicants are City of Kingman, the 2 applicants are City of Kingman residents and both are registered voters. Staff recommends reappointment of Steve LeSueur for a 2nd term ending on December 31st, 2022, and appointment of Jason Davis to his 1st term ending on December 31st, 2022. Are either of the applicants in the chamber? I see that none are in the chamber. Clerk Meredith, did either of them submit a statement?
They did not.
Okay, would the liaison to the Economic Development Advisory Commission like to comment on these appointments?
Madam Mayor, this is Cherish. I have reviewed the applications for the applicants, and I just need clarification on Mr. LeSueur's application. It does not state that he is a registered voter, and I believe that is a requirement to be on that commission. So I would like to table this until staff investigates that and is able to give clear direction on that answer. Whether it was clerical or, whether it was something that he missed on the application, it was just marked incorrectly or not.
Okay. Clerk Meredith, I notice on the write-up that it says both are registered voters. Was that confirmed or was that just assumed?
I would have the staff liaison, which is Gary Kellogg, speak to that.
I'm sorry, I would have to investigate that. I guess we made an assumption that they were both registered, yes. So if you wish to table it, we certainly can take a look at that and bring it back.
Well, I think probably we should table that application, but Councilmember Samale, do you have any issue with moving forth with Jason Davis?
I do not. I would make a motion to appoint Jason Davis to his first term ending on December 31st, 2022 to the Economic Development Advisory Commission.
Thank you. And do we have a second?
I'll second that.
We have thank you, Vice Mayor. We have a motion and a second to appoint Jason Davis to his first term. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? Motion carries unanimously. Do we need a motion to carry Steve Lesueur to table that until we determine his voter registration?
Yes, please. And Mayor, I just wanted to let you know that Counselor Nelson has joined us.
Thank you. Welcome. Okay, I'd like a motion to table the application of Steve Lesueur and bring it back once his voter registration has been determined.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Clerk Meredith, do you have the names for those motions?
Yes, Counselor
Okay.
Samley motioned and Counselor Mello seconded.
Okay. Then we have a motion and a second to table. All in favor, aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? Motion to table carries unanimously. Let's move on to the appointments for Planning and Zoning Commission. Currently, there are 2 vacancies on the Planning and Zoning Commission. One term ends December 31st, 2022, and the other ends December 31st, 2023. We currently have 3 applications for council consideration from Arminda Patez, Jen Swab, and Gary Waters Jr. All applicants are residents and registered voters. Staff recommends appointing 1 applicant to serve a term ending on December 31st, 2022, and appointing 1 applicant to serve a term ending on December 31st, 2023. Since we have 3 applicants and only 2 vacancies, we'll do a ballot tonight for all the council members to vote on the 2 that they select. But before we do that, I would ask if any of the applicants are in the chamber tonight.
Mayor, we have applicant Jen Swap and applicant Gary Waters with us.
Thank you. Would either of them like to make a statement to the council?
Yes, Jen Swap is up at the podium.
Please go ahead, Ms. Swap.
Okay, may I remove my mask?
Please do, and make sure you talk right into the microphone.
Okay, I will. Hi, my name is Jen Swap, and I live in Kingman, Arizona. I'm grateful for the time that I have to speak to the council today, and I'm grateful for your service. Thank you for considering my application to serve on the Planning and Zoning Commission. This committee plays a key role in developing a healthy and thriving community. They make important recommendations to the council about commercial and retail properties, as well as changes to existing buildings. And they ultimately help shape the well-being of a community. My husband and I moved here 8 years ago. Prior to that, we lived in Europe and many other states. I was exposed to a lot of different cultures and communities, and being involved in those communities taught me a lot about what works well to build a unified community, one that both attracts and retains educated and hardworking individuals and families, and those individuals are then able to recontribute to the community. Traveling has also taught me to respect and honor different cultures and groups. and to seek to understand different perspectives while trying to problem solve and get things done. My husband and I have 7 children. We love Kingman and we're very involved in the community. Our oldest daughter has applied to colleges this year, and as she's applied, we've been able to see what unique experiences she's been able to have in Kingman and how that's benefited her college application. And much of the thanks goes to the service of members of the community who've made that happen, including yourselves. One example of that is the work that you've done on the rejuvenation of the downtown area. Because I love my family and my children, I have a vested interest in the success and well-being of Kingman and to the community of Kingman as well. While I'm not familiar with planning and zoning rules and codes, I am a dedicated learner. My master's in organizational behavior has taught me what goes into creating healthy organizations. I believe that I have the skills and the ability to make a positive contribution on the Planning and Zoning Commission. Again, thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Swab. Thank you for your interest in serving on this commission. Mr. Waters?
Oh, gotcha. Thank you. I think it would be appropriate to introduce myself. My name is Gary Waters, longtime parent in Kingman and resident. I have lived in Kingman for 30 years, 16 years downtown. I've worked for Mojave County for 21 years, dealt with a lot of people in a lot of different agencies and departments. I'm currently applying for one of the 2 open positions on the Planning and Zoning Commission. Day to day, I do property appraisal. I'm a Department of Revenue certified, level 2 certified appraiser. I've been trusted with impartially assigning values to properties across the county. I'm currently hoping to apply the principle of our trade, which is being fair and equitable, to the Planning and Zoning Commission. So I would like your consideration for the position. Just personally, I have noticed the efforts that this town has made in improving downtown. I have a front row seat in that I live down here. And I have actually traveled the world a bit too, much like the previous applicant. In my case, I went to Haiti, and I actually saw where there were no zoning laws, and it's not pretty. As someone who is raising a son in this environment, I want to leave this town in a better shape than I found it. So I would appreciate your consideration for allowing me to serve, and hope that you give me the opportunity to join our work with the Planning and Zoning Commission to review and create new regulations. So anyway, thank you. It'd be an honor to serve. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Waters, and thank you for your interest in serving on this commission. I would now open the floor to our P&Z liaison, I think, and anyone else in the council who'd like to comment, but I'll start with Council Member Scott Staley.
Yes, thank you. You know, this will be my 2nd year serving on planning and zoning. It's a commission that I really enjoy being a part of because the work they do is interesting and it's very important to the landscape of our city. The 2 openings that we have now there's some pretty big shoes to fill. The commissioners who were there before were quite experienced and very active. And while I'm sorry to see them go after meeting with Mr. Waters and Mrs. Swab and talking to them and then hearing their presentations tonight, I think that they're both up for the challenge of filling these positions.
Thank you, Councilmember Staley. Would anybody else like to comment? If not, then I think Clerk Meredith has a ballot that she's distributed. And for those of us that are Zooming in, we will need to email her with our 2 candidate choices. And let's go ahead and do that, and then we'll assign them to the dates. And Clerk Meredith, will you tell us when you have everyone's ballot, please?
Yes, ma'am. And Mr. Vaughan was just clarifying that since there are 2 alternating terms, that the 2 that are selected, we will be drawing out of a hat on who gets the short and the long term.
That seems very fair. Thank you. I was thinking alphabetical, but it doesn't matter. Drawing it out of a hat's fine. Did you receive mine, Annie?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
It looks like we have Jen Swap and Gary Waters both receiving votes from all of the council members.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Council. And Ms. Swap and Mr. Waters, thank you for your presentations. And as I said, for your interest, I think your backgrounds are diverse and relevant to your service. And so we really appreciate you coming on board to work with the commission. Thank you.
Mayor, while we have everybody here, I think we're prepared to draw those names so that we can define the terms.
That's a good idea. Please go ahead.
Mayor, this will be for the short term.
Okay.
Ms.
This
Swap,
one is, Ms. Swap is for December 31st, 2022. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And Mr. Waters will serve a term ending on December 31st, 2023. Thank you both. And welcome. There's a lot of work in planning and zoning this year. Okay, the next order of business is award, and it's a life-saving award, which is incredibly special. It's something that we're very honored to give, and especially because this is for members of our own city team and our fire department, and for their efforts, which were incredibly heroic and so professional. And I have all the names listed here, but I'm not going to read them all because I'm going to defer to Manager Foggin and or Chief Rhodes to actually have this recognition ceremony. But just behalf on all of the whole council, I must say this is an honor to even recognize this group of individuals who are just outstanding contributors to our city. We should all be very proud to live in a city that has this level of dedicated professionals who work to make our city safe and occasionally to save our lives in a moment of need. So I'm going to turn this over to Manager Foggin to introduce Chief Rhodes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. It is absolutely, as you said, an honor for us to be able to recognize some of our team. We're extremely proud of them and grateful that they're actually here, grateful that they're all safe. As all of my team knows, my number one goal is to have all of our team work safely and get home safely. And so through this, the opportunity to save a life, I just want to add my thanks and turn the time over to Chief Rhodes to do the recognition piece. So Chief Rhodes.
Well, thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, both in person and virtually. It's an opportunity to celebrate, and I think coming up on the 1 year mark of COVID, I think some of us are searching for those. This isn't the way I want to do it, but when this happens, this is special. It really is, because we get to celebrate not only our level of service and the thing that our team does, but we get to save somebody's life, and that's very special. I sent out a video through Annie this morning, so if you didn't get to watch that, please take the opportunity tonight or tomorrow to go through that. And it gives some details, and it kind of walks through our team and what happened that night and how special it really is. I'll summarize by this, and I'll try to keep this short, but then again, I have the spotlight for a minute. And I don't have my weekly meeting with Ron until tomorrow, so I can't get in trouble until tomorrow. So think about this. On December 14th at 2:30 a.m., we get a call for a house fire. So think about 2:30 a.m. It takes me a while to get going anyway. Within 3 minutes, our crews were on scene and had effected a rescue. So think about that. The call to our 911 center processed. 3 minutes later, our people, our personnel are on scene and making a rescue. All that is transpiring very, very fast. Within 10 minutes, we had that patient, that victim, en route to the hospital. That's huge. Think about how that transpires at 10 minutes in the morning. It takes me that long to walk to the kitchen and get a bottle of water in the morning. So, but that's what we do, and it starts with our dispatch team. When our dispatchers answer that call, process all that information, and I'll be honest, when you hear the video, which we will release to the public once we finalize it, hearing those details of that video from that caller, from Jeannie Morawski, and I know I'll mess that name up again, and I'm going to get in trouble back here by her daughter. Her daughter's here, Paige. And but think about all that goes into play there. And when our teams come into play with the information based on our dispatchers who did an excellent job, you have two different crews arriving and going through their motions, right? And all this happened while there's active fire. And they hear all this going on, and you actually hear a coordinated piece that actually two members off two different crews are going in simultaneously while other members are doing other functions to allow them to cool the environment and do other things, all simultaneously. Training, teamwork, people, character, team, all the above. So we're very fortunate. We're very, very fortunate. And before I recognize those individuals, I would like to give the opportunity for Paige to come up and maybe say a word, if she'd like to. Come on up, please.
I think one of the worst things I ever heard was when someone sent me a recording of the 911 call. And I could hear the panic in my mom. And I'm really surprised that she's here today. And I just want to tell you, Ricardo, again, thank you. I know you were just doing your job, but to my mom and her family, it really mattered. And it's so wonderful to be part of a small town where things in big cities that seem so minor are a huge deal here, and thank you. Thank you very much. That's all.
So Jeannie is in the hospital still. I think about 12 days later, she contracted COVID up in the hospital, so she's still going through that. So tonight, I'd like to recognize the team members that were there. She talks about Ricardo. Ricardo was the lead firefighter on the nozzle, so you think Ricardo's been with us a couple years, so I'd like to stand up and recognize Ricardo for going in that house that night. Thank you. So Ricardo will be receiving the Valor Award along with Bob Casson, who was that captain making some of those decisions and orchestrating the scene as it was happening on the entryway to that house. So Bob will also be receiving that award tonight. So, Bob. So what's kind of unique about this is the Valor Awards given for that actually touching a patient. But in our case, we thought recognizing the entire team was very important, because this doesn't happen just because two people crawl down a hallway and do that piece. That is huge. That is by far one of our biggest things. And you also get to see something here of a newer firefighter, and Bob retires later this year. And the amount of experience we lose with Bob and Kelly Johnson, who was also on scene and here tonight, we lose both those individuals to retirement this year. So huge testaments to their careers and what we do here at Kingman. So I'd also like to recognize a couple other people, and that is the main person on the radio that night was communications supervisor Elena Anastasio, and also I got those backwards. Supervisor Amy Kennedy, and telecommunicator Elena Estacio, who will be receiving another award, the Chiefs Award, tonight as well. So if those two would stand up. Elena's due here in a couple months, so just the journey across for her this evening of waddling was something to watch in itself. So, and I'll pay for that later as well. Our people on scene that night, and I recognize all of them at once, is Engineer Chris Jackson, Firefighter Lane Nielsen, and Captain Kelly Johnson, if they would stand up as well. So Lane was actually the firefighter cooling down the environment, whereas I couldn't ask for a better paramedic to be a patient be handed to deliver service. And over all of these individuals is our Battalion Chief, Tommy Flanagan, who orchestrated this event. So, Tommy. So with that, I thank you for letting me be here. I thank you every day for letting us operate the department like we do. This is testament to the level of service that we deliver here in Kingman. We do it every day, every night, even at 2:30 in the morning. So if you have an opportunity, go watch that video. If you have any questions, give me a call. And thank you all again. Thank you.
Chief Rhodes, thank you for your dedication to your team, but also to your dedication to training, which we have been witness to for years now since you came on board, and it's certainly paid off. And I would encourage everyone to watch the video when it is available. Just the first opening moments are chilling, truly. But if that was Miss Elena Estancia, that was the dispatcher, she was so calm, and it was so comforting to hear that calm voice asking the right questions. So again, just thank you, and thank you for all the service that was shown that night. Let's move on now. That's a hard act to follow, but let's move on to call to the public, comments from the public, which, as you know, this is a hybrid meeting, so we take comments from those that are there who have signed up to comment, or those who have asked to call in, or those that have written comments and submitted them. But all comments are limited in terms of any action taken will be limited to directing staff to study the matter or rescheduling the matter, and there are no comments allowed that advertise for a particular person or group. Clerk Meredith, were there any comments received, or is anyone registered to speak?
No, ma'am, I don't have anybody registered or in person for call to the public.
Thank you. Then let's move on to the consent agenda. And before we move on, I would like to announce that there are a few changes to our agenda this evening, and I'll just go ahead and mention those. In the consent agenda, we are taking out item E, which is about vehicle replacements. And that is, I think, going to return at another time. And I'll just move ahead and say in new business, we will be removing tonight items C and D, and those will return at a later meeting also. And one final thing, one final change to the agenda is that our auditor for the comprehensive annual financial report, Brian Hemmerly, will be giving his presentation after the consent agenda and before new business because of a scheduling issue that he has. So having said that, we'll return to the consent agenda. And so all matters here are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, the item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. Would any council member like to remove a item from the consent agenda other than E? Hearing none, then I would ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item E.
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda with the exception of item E.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councilmember Nelson. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Ayes. Motion carries unanimously to adopt the consent agenda. We have no old business, so let's move into new business. The first item of new business.
Mayor?
Nope, I am about, no, you don't, I got it. Caught myself just in time. I saw my big arrow. We won't move into the new business. We are going to have our department report on the fiscal year 2019 to 2020 comprehensive annual financial report. And I think our auditor of Henry and Horn is represented here, but I'll turn it over to you, Manager Foggin.
Thank you, Mayor. As is the tradition of all the cities that I've ever worked for, is we look always forward to our annual financial report from our auditor. And obviously, we are very interested in the audit report because it tells not only the health of our finances, but it tells you, the elected officials, as well as our community, how we are doing with handling the money, as in our policies and procedures. And so we are absolutely proud to have Tina and her team doing an amazing job, and we're happy to welcome our auditor tonight. So with that, maybe I'll just let Tina, since it's her and her team that do all the work with, or for the most part, all the work with the auditor. I'll just let her introduce and kick us off on to the audit report.
Thank you, Mr. Foggin. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I am happy to introduce Brian Hemmerly, who is a partner of our external audit firm, Henry and Horn, tonight, as he shares with you an overview of our fiscal year 20 financial audit. Brian?
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. Again, my name is Brian Hemmerly. I just want to make sure you can all see my slides here. Can I get a thumbs up from anybody if you do? Great.
We're good.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. So again, my name is Brian Hemmerly. I am the partner on the audit this year. It's a pleasure to be able to present to you, council, and members of your community. This year's audit went really well. It was a smooth audit, even with the COVID-19 restrictions we had. We appreciate finance allowing us to come out and perform the audit in the building with, of course, our masks and our social distancing, it makes the audit go a lot smoother, and it's a lot better to do an audit in person than it is to try and do it virtually. So with that, I'm going to get into the specifics of the audit. I have some required communications that I need to communicate to the council. First off, I want to make sure that everyone understands this audit is to meet the standards required by Arizona state statutes, the AICPA, and generally accepted accounting principles. Because you're a government, you also fall under generally accepted government auditing standards. We provide reasonable assurance on the financial statements to make sure they are materially correct. What does that mean? Reasonable assurance means that we test almost all transactions, but we do not test every single transaction. We use statistical sampling. We do internal control test work. We walk through your controls. We observe them. We make sure they're effective and in place. Our statistical sampling is projected with any misstatements we find. And if we do have misstatements that we find, we ask that management correct them. We had no issues with any uncorrected misstatements, no difficulties encountered. We had no disagreements with management this year, and we're not aware of any outside consultation with other audit firms. So that's just a little bit about the required communication. This year, the important stuff, this year, the city of Kingman's financial statements received an unmodified opinion. What that means is you have a clean opinion on your financial statements. They are fairly stated in all material respects. These financial statements are available to your community as well as your bondholders and other debt holders, and any grant covenant or grant compliance requirements and debt covenant requirements. We also issue a separate audit report where we look at just the compliance with grant agreements, contracts, laws, regulations, and debt covenants. So we'll recalculate those covenants, and we will look at the individual allowable cost per grants and other laws and regulations. This year, the city of Kingman received a clean opinion on that audit report as well. We call that audit report our Yellow Book or GAGAS report because that's what the federal government refers to it as. Last year in that report, you did receive a material weakness over the financial statement closing process. This year, that material weakness has been corrected, and it was not reported again in the 2020 financial statements. However, we do have one finding this year, and it's related to land held for sale with the airport fund. Essentially, what had happened is in the past, when the airport fund had been brought into the city of Kingman's financial statements, there was some land that had not been identified and reported in the airport's financial statements, and therefore had not been included in the city's financial statements for that fund column in your enterprise funds. The way this was detected by finance and management is that a portion of the land had been sold, and when they went to book the entry to recognize the gain on this land, there was a realization that the land wasn't on the balance sheet. So we needed to book a journal entry this year with management to restate your equity and your assets. If you're gonna have a restatement, this is probably one of the best ones you could have, because what we did is increase your investments, your assets, and we also increased your equity. So it's actually kind of a nice restatement, but that is the finding we had this year, and it was related to, again, the land with the airport fund. That land is not considered a capital asset. It's considered investment. And the reason for that is because it's being held for sale. It's not being used for operations with the airport. So in the future, you'll continue to see that as an investment until that land is sold in the future. Other than that, we had no other significant deficiencies or recommendations that we made to management this year. You do have what's called an expenditure limitation report. This is a report that is sent to the Auditor General's office for the state of Arizona annually. It's required that you spend less than the Economic Estimates Commission based on what your city has chosen to do. And in this case, the Economic Estimates Commission was $47.7 million in expenditures. You had to spend less than that. The CAFR, after certain deductions like a tax return, had expenditures subject to that limitation of only $34 million. And so you were well underneath your limitation by $13.6 million. That will be filed, if not already, with the Auditor General's office. My last few slides here are really just some trend information that sometimes the council and the community likes to see. This is a 5-year trend of your governmental funds cash. So this does not include your enterprise funds, no utilities or airport funds. This is just general funds, some special revenue grant type funds, things of that nature. You can see cash had a nice increase the last 5 years. This year it had leveled off. Your business type fund cash trends for the last 5 years also has had a nice increase over the last 5 years. This does include and only includes your enterprise funds. So funds that are essentially there to sustain their own expenses, their charges for services, sustain their own expenses. There's no subsidies from taxpayers. Your governmental type fund balance sheet. So this again gets back to your governmental funds. It does not include your enterprise funds. This is a 5-year trend of assets, liabilities, and equity, or what we call net position in the government world. Your red line there are your assets. Your liabilities is the green line, and the net position is the blue line. Some of you probably know from your accounting classes in college or maybe even high school that assets equals liabilities plus net position. That's why assets will always look quite a bit higher. You'll see assets had a nice increase as well in the last 5 years, and your liabilities have stayed pretty consistent, very level for those governmental funds. This is the same graph, but for your business type activities. So again, your enterprise funds. And in this situation, it looks even better. Your liabilities are showing a nice decrease over the years. So your net position has responded with a nice increase in the last 5 years. So that's my brief presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Are there any questions from members of the council? I believe there are no questions, Mr. Hamley, but we appreciate the presentation.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like any correction that needed to be made has been made or noted. So we appreciate very much the work that you did in the audit. And we thank Director Moline and her team for, as usual, doing an outstanding job with the finances of the city.
Yes, thank you very much. We appreciate being out there this year, and the finance department does a great job, and they're very helpful. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay, back to our new business. Let me find that. First order of new business will be a public hearing and consideration of resolution number 5333, approving a minor amendment to the Kingman General Plan 2030, changing the projected land use of certain property from high-density residential, 17 to 28 dwelling units per acre, to community commercial at 135 East Oak Street. Kevin and Stephanie Wilkerson, applicants and property owners, have requested a minor amendment to the Kingman General Plan 2030. The subject property is 9,375 square feet and is located at 135 East Oak Street. The Planning and Zoning Commission held a public hearing on January 12th, 2021, and recommended the approval of the minor general plan amendment as requested by a vote of 5-0, and staff recommends approval. And I think I am first turning this over to Manager Foggin before the public hearing is opened.
Actually, Mayor, Rich is ready to present.
Okay. Mr. Ruggles, please go ahead.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of the council. This is a minor general plan amendment to the Kingman General Plan 2030. It's a request from Kevin and Stephanie Wilkerson, and the request is to change the land use designation of a property located at 135 East Oak Street from high-density residential 17 to 28 units per acre to neighborhood commercial. If approved, this will facilitate the consideration of a concurrent request to rezone the property as proposed in the case that will follow this one, RZ 20008. This screen shows the general plan map for the area. The block that the property is located in is all currently designated to high-density residential. The star that you can see in the middle of the map is the property itself. You have areas of intermediate density residential to the north, public and quasi-public areas to the west, which is the high school, and to the east, which is the government complex, city and county. And on the south side of Oak Street, you have an area that's designated as neighborhood commercial, and that's being requested to be expanded essentially across the street to capture the property in question. This is the zoning map of the area, also showing the utilities within the area, the water and sewer, streets in the area. This is mostly a mixed-use neighborhood with a mixture of duplexes, single-family homes, as well as some commercial properties, as I mentioned, on the south side of Oak Street. Again, showing the water and utilities in the area and full street improvements adjoining the property. Utilities are all in place within this area. Some photographs showing the property itself. There's a older residence in the front built in 1917. In the rear, there's a existing commercial building that was formerly a daycare center. So the surrounding property owners were notified that we're within 300 feet of the property. We posted the site. We placed notices in the Kingman Daily Miner. We did receive one comment from the public that was received just prior to the P&Z Commission meeting in January. There weren't really any department or agency objections or comments on the request. So with any general plan amendment process, we have to follow the procedure in the Kingman Municipal Code. First step is to determine whether it qualifies as a minor or major amendment. In this case, we determined that based upon the criteria in the code, it does qualify as a minor amendment. If amendments to the general plan are considered, they shall only be approved if the amendment is consistent with policies and objectives of the rest of the plan, and that the proposed amendment furthers the public health, safety, and general welfare of the citizens of Kingman. So the first step was to look at the relevant general plan policies and objectives. Within the land use element of the general plan, Objective 3 states that it's the plan's objective to encourage a compatible mix of land uses which allows accessibility to goods and services without extensive travel. The growth area element contains two relevant objectives. One is to encourage infill to occur in several areas, including the downtown area, to promote the most cost-efficient and logical expansion of public services and infrastructure. Objective 3 is to encourage a planned mixture of land uses and provides for a choice of transportation modes, which reduces automobile dependency and provides the needed public open space and creates a sense of place. So the proposal for this neighborhood commercial designation on the subject site will help to support these above state policies and objectives. And this site is also centrally located in the downtown area, so that it may serve nearby residents. Next item is to review the compatibility with other land uses in the area. If the amendment is being done to change the land use map, which in case it is, additional finding must be made that the proposed change will be compatible with other land uses existing or planned in the vicinity. The neighborhood commercial land use designation, as I showed in the earlier map, is in place on the south side of Oak Street, so this would be just an expansion to the north, slightly to accommodate the proposed commercial development. The remainder of the block will remain unchanged, and this designation is generally compatible with the multifamily designation for the rest of the block. As I mentioned, it's a mixed-use area already. So it was our analysis that in compliance with the Kingman Municipal Code, that this general plan amendment will be consistent with the policies and objectives of the rest of the plan, and it will further the public health, safety, and general welfare of the citizens of Kingman. Also, in accordance with the municipal code, the plan appears to, or the proposed change appears to be compatible with other land uses existing or planned in the vicinity. So based on these findings, the Planning and Zoning Commission voted to recommend approval of the request to change the current land use designation from high density to neighborhood commercial, and as reflected in resolution 5333, and staff is recommending approval. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ruggles. Does the council have any questions for Mr. Ruggles? Thank you, Rich. I think at this time then, since this is a public hearing, I will open the public hearing and ask, is there anyone in the chamber who would care to address the council on this resolution?
Mayor, the applicant, Kevin Wilkerson, would like to address the council on his item.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wilkerson, please come forward and welcome.
Thank you, Council, for hearing me this evening and reviewing my agenda. My name is Kevin Wilkerson, and I am requesting that the property my wife and I own located at 135 East Oak Street be rezoned into C1 commercial property. My wife and I are wanting to remodel this property into her new hair and nail salon. Her salon is already a 14-year successful business, and this will only benefit her business, and we feel it will benefit the downtown area. I have already met with Chris Young from the City of Kingman Building Department, and any potential red flags for this project have been overcome. I have won various awards for remodeling properties and buildings, including the prestigious Andy Award. Also, the City of Kingman has presented me with the Clean City of Commission Award for remodeling a rundown house into a commercial office in a residential neighborhood. I have also won a total of 17 awards in the landscaping industry, including the National Design Build Award. More importantly, I have also designed and executed the tenant improvement of 2 very nice salons in Kingman. Both Stephanie's salon and my company are extremely successful and have been in business for almost 15 years each. This remodel will make her already successful hair and nail salon even more defined in the community. With all the previous examples and descriptions of my past work, I can promise that this renovation will be my finest work yet. We own this building and want it to be very nice for investment reasons, as well as the nicest salon in Kingman. More importantly, we want to set the bar for a remodeled downtown project. We also might pursue the historic registration process to the front 104-year-old building. However, we will keep the historic look with bringing everything up to code and state of the art. If we can make the parking work in the street, we proposed then that we will have a very nice lawn and flagpole area in front of the business. If we cannot make the parking work, we will have to use the potential front lawn area as parking. We are currently still working on these circumstances, keeping in mind that most businesses in the downtown area do not support their total occupancy loads. That is the way that most downtown areas are usually structured. We are also interested in having the front building turned into a neighborhood coffee shop, serving fresh brew, coffee, and morning grab-and-go pastries in the potential future. In closing, we feel that this remodel will benefit downtown Kingman, as well as keep an already successful business moving forward for many years of success. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilkerson. That sounds like a wonderful plan. Is there anyone else in the chamber that would like to comment on this resolution number 5333? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing and ask council if you have any comments, or I would entertain a motion.
Mayor, I would entertain a motion that we move forward with this resolution, this change. Thank you.
Okay, so that is Councilmember Nelson has moved that we adopt this resolution. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I'm sorry,
Councilmember
who was it?
I'll second.
Councilmember Stamley. We have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 5333. All in favor, aye.
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 Any opposed, like sign? The resolution number 5333 is adopted unanimously. We'll move on to a public hearing and consideration of ordinance number 1919, rezoning certain property from R2 residential multiple family low density to C1 commercial neighborhood convenience at 135 East Oak Street. Kevin and Stephanie Wilkerson, applicants and property owners, have requested a rezoning. The subject property is 9,375 square feet and is located at 135 East Oak Street. The Planning and Zoning Commission held a public hearing on January 12th, 2021, and recommended the approval of the rezoning by a vote of 5-0. Staff recommends approval. Mr. Ruggles, do you have comments?
Yes, I need to bring up the PowerPoint here. Not seeing it on here. That's the last one. Good evening again, Mayor, members of the council. This is rezoning case 20-008. It's a request to rezone the same property we just discussed at 135 East Oak Street from R2 to C1, commercial neighborhood convenience. I'll scroll through the slide that you've already seen. Skip ahead to the this is a conceptual layout that Mr. Wilkinson was describing earlier, showing the proposed or the existing buildings on the site, the front building being a potential coffee shop, the rear building being the hair and nail salon that was formerly the Crumb Crushers Daycare Center. In accordance with the section 31.400 of the Kingman zoning ordinance and considering any change to the official zoning map, the Planning and Zoning Commission had to make findings on the following items before recommending approval. First item has to do with whether there's a demonstrated need for the uses permitted in the proposed zoning district. The intended purpose of the C1 district is to provide for the development of very limited neighborhood shopping areas situated adjacent to and surrounded by residential districts. C1 uses that are allowed include things like hair and nail salons, offices, small restaurants such as coffee and sandwich shops, small scale retail such as jewelry stores, tailor shops, florist shops, and commercial daycare facilities. The downtown area continues to attract new businesses, and the expansion of C1 zoning at the subject site will help to serve those local residents. This should be done without diminishing the mixed residential environment of single-family and multifamily uses in the neighborhood. Next topic is the suitability of the proposed district and the compatibility with the surrounding area and community. Prior to 1983, this property was actually zoned C2, and there was a daycare and preschool on the site from 1970 all the way till 2010. So there is actually a history of commercial use of the property. It is recommended that the historic appearance of the house be maintained. It was built in 1917, although it is not within the historic overlay district and it is not on the historic register currently. On-street parking may be counted toward providing the required parking spaces once the new zoning code is adopted. This is explicit in the new zoning code as opposed to being sort of implicit by the way the development has occurred in the downtown area under the current code. And this is a common practice for other commercial properties in the area. So it's something we can look at the time of development. Masonry fence will need to be erected on the west side of the property at the time of development between the commercial and residential uses. And this is a requirement of the zoning ordinance. And this zoning will be in conformance with the general plan as amended by the council this evening under Resolution 5333. So based upon the findings and within the report, the Planning and Zoning Commission voted 5-0 to recommend approval of the rezoning from R2 to C1 for the property at 135 East Oak Street. As reflected in ordinance number 1919 before you this evening, staff recommends approval. And again, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Rich. Does the council have any questions for Mr. Ruggles? Thank you. Hearing none, I'll open the public hearing. This is a public hearing regarding the consideration of ordinance number 1919. Is there anyone in the chamber who would like to address the council? Is there anyone in the chamber who would like to comment on this to the council? If not, I'll close the public hearing and ask the council if anyone has comments or would like to make a motion on this agenda item.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Actually, I want to just comment first and I'll make a motion, but I'm excited to see another business coming down. I know, coming down to the downtown area, and utilizing a building that has been probably sitting empty for a while. And it will be sad because I would probably suspect that the hair salon that the Wilkersons have up on Stockton Hill Road are going to be moving that one. So we'll lose a business off of Stockton Hill Road, but we're gaining a business downtown, which is good for the downtown area. It'll bring more people downtown, and that will help our city. And so I would make a motion that we accept this rezoning ordinance number 1919.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I have a motion to approve 1919. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Counselor. We have a motion and a second to approve ordinance 1919. All in favor, aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? Ordinance 1919 is approved unanimously. Thank you. So that ends our business for this evening. We'll move on to department reports. And our next report is our water loss audit report. I believe Manager Foggin, is this going to be Mr. Owen?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Owen, and welcome. We can't hear you.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, sorry about that. We have a presentation for you tonight from Drew Blackwell. He works for a company called Kavanaugh and Associates. A few years ago, we were part of a pilot program through the Arizona Department of Water Resources to go through the American Water Works Association water loss audit process with the idea of establishing a non-revenue water management program. So we've got Drew here this evening, and he's going to kind of take you through how that process works, what the results of it were, and what our next steps are going forward. So with that, Drew, if you could, there you go.
All right. Thank you very much for the introduction, Rob. Good evening, Mayor Miles, City Council members. Thanks for the opportunity to update you on this important project on water loss control and non-revenue water management. My name is Drew Blackwell, as Rob said. I'm the non-revenue water program manager for Kavanaugh. We're an engineering consultant firm specializing in bioenergy and water efficiency. I'm also the project manager for the work that we're going to be discussing this evening. The purpose of this presentation is really to inform you on the steps the city's taking to embrace best management practices for effective water loss
control. In this short time, we'll provide an overview of the program, the outcomes of the program to date, and next steps and recommendations. We've allotted some time for questions at the end as well. First off, as Rob mentioned, this isn't the first time we've had the pleasure of working with the City of Kingman. We first connected through the pilot program through Department of Water Resources and WIFA back in 2017. From there, we reconnected as the city was looking to do more with their water loss program, and we established a multi-phased approach to building a structured water loss program and help guide informed decisions to reduce losses and capture some lost revenue in the water utility. So the first phase of the program is the primary focus of this evening's presentation. Before we jump into the program overview, I'd like to take just a moment to introduce some terms, and through that, an introduction to the methodology used in this program that Rob referred to as the AWWA M36 methodology. So in its simplest form, water supplied minus authorized consumption equals your water losses. So water supplied, this is treated sources going into the drinking water distribution system. Authorized consumption is what you would normally think of consumption with residential use, commercial use, and some municipal use as well, and operational use. This rudimentary calculation is one of the results we'll be looking at, but the water audit breaks it down further to components that's called non-revenue water. The tool and methodology by which we are calculating our water losses come to us from the American Water Works Association, or AWWA, and their manual for water auditing and loss control programs. So what is non-revenue water then? The AWWA water auditing method takes a mass balance approach. Thus, all volumes of water can be systematically accounted for, either measured volumes through metering or estimated usage. So here's a display of non-revenue water components and how they're calculated. So we would start with the treated water from the city wells. We worked with the City of Kingman in the calendar year 2019. So for that year, I believe there were 17 active wells. So we're starting with the treated sources entering our drinking water distribution system. Most of that water is delivered for consumption as intended for residential and commercial uses. These are the typically billed and metered and can be referred to as your revenue water. There are some uses that are not billed and or not metered, but they're still considered authorized uses. So examples of these would be park uses, municipal buildings, operational flushing, things of that sort. So this makes up our first component of non-revenue water, unbilled, authorized consumption. Now, the difference between the treated water entering the distribution system and the consumption we just spoke on is the water loss. And it's further separated down into two types of losses. Apparent losses are instances when the water is making it to the customer, but we're not capturing all the revenue for it. So think of an inaccurate customer meter, for example, or perhaps when someone is taking water illegally without paying for it. These are examples of apparent losses, also known as paper losses. The other type of loss is real loss, and these are the physical leaks in your system. These are the losses we most associate when we hear the word water loss. These are the losses where they're coming to the surface or a member of your community is alerting you to these. Our non-revenue water is made up of our unbilled authorized consumption, the apparent losses, and the real losses. So that's what we mean when we're discussing non-revenue water. Now that we're a little bit more familiar with the terms and what we are tracking, here's the overall goal of the program that we are putting together with the City of Kingman. Our goal really is not to achieve zero losses or zero leakage, but to find the economic optimum level of intervention and avoid overspending either through aggressive intervention or more commonly reactive intervention. So in order to do that, we need to take some steps to make sure the information that we're using to determine how to invest in water loss control is accurate and reliable. So we set forth on this multi-phase approach for the Kingman non-revenue water management program. These steps that you see here on the screen are the typical progression of a water loss program. Each of these steps incorporates best management practices determined by AWWA related to non-revenue water. The approach begins with establishing a baseline of water audit data. And that's interpreting the results in terms of volume, how much water are we losing, value, how much is it costing us each year, and validity, how reliable is the data going into the water audit in the first place. So once the baseline is established, the city can perform a technical analysis to develop specific loss profiles to understand what's the appropriate intervention strategy to their water losses. Basically just picking the right tool for the problem. From here, targets can be set by establishing what is economically recoverable and a program designed for implementation. So moving from left to right, moving from audit to action. The multi-phase program approach is anchored by the best practice of completing the annual water audit each year. So that's going to be the focus of what we carried out in phase one. Phase one began in August of 2020, and we concluded the first phase in November. And the primary focus of phase one was really to reinforce those AWWA methods for water auditing and loss control and compile the 2019 water audit for the city of Kingman. The city was already well underway with using the water audit data each year and establishing that baseline. They're taking the next step in moving from audit to action there. So in phase one, we're essentially asking ourselves, or calculating the water losses and understanding how valid is the data going into the results that we're getting. This slide represents the task level activities and interactions that we had with the Kingman water utility staff. At the discovery stage, we conducted a kickoff meeting with the utility staff and asked for utility-specific data that we would review and eventually place into the water audit software. Interviews with all the pertinent staff and departments were held regarding the data and the practices and policies that are employed throughout the system. That's one way that we gauge the reliability in the data that's going into the water audit. The top-down analysis, this is we use the industry standard tool, the AWWA water audit software. So this is a tool used to calculate those volumes and values of our non-revenue water components, as well as the data validity. And the top-down assessment of the key performance indicators, essentially these are the results, the outputs of the water audit that we reported back to the Kingman team. Industry standards were also applied in validating the water audit data, using industry standard manual to make sure that the information going into the water audit was correct, free of error, but also making sure that we are appropriately evaluating how valid that data is. And then a final technical memo was delivered to the Kingman team and outlined recommendations and next steps. So now we'll take a look at some of the results from phase one. One notable difference that distinguishes the AWWA methodology as the industry standard tool apart from other rudimentary calculations of water loss is that the results are interpreted in terms of volume, value, and validity rather than a percentage of system input volume. Disaggregating these components of non-revenue water can provide us more insight into our losses rather than a single water loss number or percentage. And the Kingman water audit results are going to be shown in those terms of volume, value, and validity. The validity part is important because any uncertainty that we have going into the water audit will translate to some degree, some uncertainty when we're calculating our water losses. So this chart shows the three main components of non-revenue water. Again, the unbilled authorized consumption in green, the apparent losses in red, and the real losses or the physical leaks in blue. Now on the left side of your screen, these results or these components of non-revenue water are shown volumetrically. And then on the right, they're broken down by cost. So the volumes, they're a result of that mass balance approach that we discussed to calculate our non-revenue water. The costs are specific to the type of loss that we're seeing. So unbilled authorized consumption in green and the real losses in blue, those are valued at the cost to produce the water. So chemical costs, treatment costs, that's how we're valuing the cost of those two loss components. Our apparent losses, however, are valued at the customer retail rate. So here we see that the real losses or the leakage is the greatest component volumetrically, but apparent losses are the greatest component by cost. So you can start to see that breaking this down by volumes and values is a little bit more meaningful than looking at this as a percentage-based metric of your water loss. Now, recall that the unbilled authorized consumption and the apparent losses, they have additional subcomponents there. So this chart expands out a little bit to include those subcomponents. So for the unbilled metered consumptions and the unbilled unmetered consumption are two parts of the unbilled authorized consumption. And then there are three components of the apparent losses: customer metering inaccuracies, theft, water theft, and then data handling errors. The customer metering inaccuracies is the largest component by cost and by volume of apparent losses, and that's typical in most water systems. So looking at it in terms of volume, value, and validity now. So the data validity score is a, let's see if, the data validity score is a gauge of how reliable the data is going into the water audit. So here we see that the city of Kingman, their data validity score falls in that range that's highlighted there of a data validity score from 51 to 70. And really, rather than focusing on the single number score, we're more interested in where a utility falls on this water loss control planning guide. Generally, just to kind of orient you here as a rule of thumb, anything less than 50, then we're really, our options are really just to focus on improving the integrity of our data. But once you go north of 50, you can always continue to improve your data, but you can start to take some actionable steps based on the results that you're getting from the water audit. So at the conclusion of the water audit, there's several recommendations that may apply. And the good news is that the city staff are already doing a lot of good things here. Through our interviews, they established that they're using detailed written data collection and monthly tracking mechanisms that are consistent with the AWWA methodology. Leads have been established to maintain responsibility for data tracking, project management, and reporting relative to non-revenue water intervention strategies. And again, City of Kingman has been great at keeping with the annual water audit compilation since they began doing that in the pilot program in 2017. The most relevant recommendations from a result of phase one are highlighted here. And those we'll talk about those in the next steps, but conducting a more technical analysis and developing loss profiles, assessing the feasibility for supply meter testing. That was one of the top recommendations, immediate recommendations that we had, and something that the city has already begun looking into. I think the pandemic has maybe slowed the process a bit, but already some contractors that could perform this type of testing for the city have been reached out to. So that top immediate recommendation is already underway. And then conducting an economic analysis. If you recall, we want to find that economic optimum level of intervention. So we want to understand what's economically recoverable. So for the next steps and the recommendations for the water loss program, I want to share this in context with that multi-phase approach that we looked at. And since we've established through phase 1 that we have a high enough confidence in our results and in the data going into that, we are able to move forward. And the next step in the water loss program is to continue to improve the data to make more informed decisions through the next 2 stages highlighted here. So that's this technical analysis and the economic analysis. The next phase, or phase 2, will perform a technical analysis of the raw billing data and develop loss profiles. So apparent loss profiles and real loss profiles to understand the different types of leakage that are occurring where we're experiencing the most leakage. And that's going to be important because each different type of leakage has a different tool to associate with it. Our apparent losses, understanding our customer metering inaccuracies a little bit better to formulate a plan for a meter testing strategy. So in order to do that, we'll engage the water staff in a very similar way that we did in phase 1. We'll still need to request some additional data and work with them to model out these different loss profiles. Phase 3 is where the economic analysis comes in. And we do this to identify what's economically recoverable. These targets will help to set that optimum level of intervention. This is probably best shown by an example. This is not City of Kingman data, but an example from another utility that we've used to illustrate what we might get out of this economic example. To orient you here, the bar to the red bar is what was established of the current annual level of losses after performing a water audit. And through economic modeling, the green is what is economically recoverable, or the potential to recover that non-revenue water. And again, we're always looking at this in terms of volume and value. So that difference between the current level of losses and what's economically recoverable, we refer to as the gap. What we can start to look to set targets, realistic goals for our program. All right, so that's what I have for you on the water loss audit report. Mayor Miles, City Council members, again, I really appreciate this opportunity to provide this update to you. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have this time.
Thank you, Mr. Blackwell. We appreciate the information and the work that you're doing with our city staff. Councilors, do you have any questions or comments?
Mayor, I simply have one. Wow. That was a whole lot of information. We're studying some water for a day or two, aren't we?
Thank you, Councilmember Nelson. Yes, there's a lot to this. And one thing that comes to my mind as I absorb all of this and I look at the gap of both from the revenue side and also, but primarily from the millions of gallons of water or that ultimately we're trying to save. Given that the city is so dedicated to water conservation and long-term solutions for our water issues, this is really important. So we thank you for the presentation. Rob, we thank you and your team for doing everything that feeds into this analysis. So It is a lot to absorb, but we know you're out there doing it, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Okay. And we have another department report, which is the Economic Development Retail Update. Manager Fagan, is this Director, is this Sylvia Schaefer?
Actually,
Okay, it's going to be Sylvia.
It's going to be Sylvia. To kick it off, we're going to have, this is kind of a two-part department report.
Okay.
We will have Gary and the team talking to you at next council meeting with regards to really economic development as a whole and how we're doing with the economic development master plan. And so, but with that, we thought, it would be good to hear from the retail side of what Sylvia's been working on, because there's some very specific things that are relevant to Kingman and what Sylvia has been engaged in. So Gary has asked Sylvia to get this started with a follow-up conversation at next council meeting.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, great. So this past year, we've actually had quite a few great successes, even in the light of COVID, I would have to say, with retail coming into Kingman. We have several that are landing still, but they're on their way, and that would include the Cal Ranch, Culver's, Harbor Freight, Dutch Brothers, Filiberto's, and then some more. Of course, we're always working on something, right? A lot of the success, though, can be contributed to, the economic development team working with a retail recruiter, which is Ricky Hayes of Retail Attractions. And today is the day we'd like to actually get you to know a little bit more about Ricky. We've been working with Ricky since 2020, and he's been an important asset to us as far as acting like an extension of our team and marketing Kingman nationally to national retailers that, otherwise I may not have been able to connect to, especially this past year, since we didn't make a lot of the conferences we would have normally made, like the ICSD in Vegas and a couple others. Ricky has those contacts that he's had for years. So we've had a contract with Ricky of Retail Attractions since since January of last year, and it ended this December, and we would like to extend it to keep the momentum, and that's the item that will be placed on next month's agenda. But we did want to get you to hear from Ricky and hear what he has to say about our retail recruitment, and this is when I will lead into letting Ricky speak now.
Thank you, Sylvia. Mayor and council, it's an honor to be in your presence tonight from cold and windy Tulsa, Oklahoma. Very much, we have trees here and grass, but nothing as pretty as Kingman, I promise you. Like Sylvia said, we were out in Kingman last January, visited the council meeting, met many of you. Looks like there's a couple of new faces, but we have enjoyed this year and working with Gary and Bennett and Sylvia. You have a great team of economic development persons and a great market to promote. As I said, we began working last January and then compiled a series of reports on your retail market from a couple of different geographies. One, we did the city limits, obviously is something that close to, a retail zone and trade area all comes out of the city limits. And then we did 5, 10, and 15 mile radius rings around your city, a 20-mile radius ring around your city. But those radius rings don't tell the true story of your market. Kingman, with the geography in the state of Arizona, in the interstate running through, and your proximity to Vegas and Bullhead, creates a real strong regional market for a number of retailers that are still missing in your inventory locally. And so we've done 10, 15, and 30-minute drive times And very recently, we've had the occasion to purchase cell phone data that allows us to actually see unique cell phone numbers that have come into the market from various nations. And after compiling these reports, we begin to contact every retailer and restaurant that publicly stated they were looking for Arizona sites. And from the small ones, the little small floor plate coffee and restaurant, quick serve restaurant sites, to much larger retailers. You should, because of your market, already be home to retailers like TJ Maxx, Ulta Cosmetics, Hobby Lobby, some of these other retailers. We have actively worked with all this lineup of tenants across the country. Our company has worked in over 450 cities in 39 states. And again, I've been in 39 states looking at city governments and retail recruitment. And I can tell you, our 3.5 days in Kingman was what you have a very beautiful city. And if I live long enough, I want to come and stay for several weeks and really explore the desert. It's a fascinating place to me. We spent about 6 hours in the Joshua Tree area north of town. And for a Texas and Oklahoma boy, I was just amazed at the beauty and not to mention the Grand Canyon. But on top of that, we have had very good response back from the retailers that we've contacted and the developers who build for those retailers. There are some things working that I'm not at liberty to talk about tonight to you in this forum. Sylvia and Bennett and Gary are aware of some of the things that we're doing, some of the things that are, as Sylvia mentioned, gaining momentum. One of the things that we're working on, and our intent from the very beginning, was to create a mass of new retailers in new construction in a part of the city of Kingman. And I would tell you that the retailers I mentioned earlier, those junior anchors, you've got Ross, but if you have a Ross, you need a TJ. Every community, every market your size should have a Hobby Lobby or a Michael's or some type of retailer that caters to both the home decor and the hobbies of the folks in your market. The other thing that's really needed, and Kingman is the perfect place, is to have a wholesale club of some kind, with Sam's being in the Bullhead and Havasu area, and the closest other, we won't mention the name, but the closest other being in the Las Vegas metro area. Kingman's market is ripe for that addition, which would bring in a regional response from consumers that would affect not only your existing retail, but have a direct impact on your sales tax. Even in this pandemic, as Sylvia mentioned, many of the retail conferences that we've been used to going to for the last 20 years, for me to hear the International Council of Shopping Centers announce that they were not going to do the Las Vegas retail show for the pandemic fears that arose out of that. And then they canceled it again this spring. They have tentatively set it for December of 21. I still don't know if that's going to happen or not, but we are joining many regional conferences via Zoom, and we're contacting by phone and by email. Literally, we've contacted between 12 and 1,500 restaurant and retail establishments, educating them on the depth of your market. Again, this is a slow process, even in a non-pandemic time, but we were overjoyed at the addition to your inventory of the tenants that Sylvia mentioned. I think I impressed Sylvia one time early this spring when we were working with Harbor Freight, and we were wondering what issues they were holding up on, and literally emailed the Harbor Freight real estate contact that I had known for a number of years, and produced him on a phone call with Sylvia so we could address some of those concerns from the local community to that corporate retailer directly. And that's what we bring to the cities. We bring a network of retail relationships that we've established over 20 years. For the sake of time, I will answer any questions you have. We've enjoyed our time. Like I said, you have a beautiful community, and I hope at some point in the near future, I'm able to spend a lot more time there because I love it, and it is absolutely a gorgeous place. So I'll answer any questions you have, and thank you for your consideration. We've really enjoyed working with you and would love to continue.
Thank you, Mr. Hayes. It's a pleasure to have you here tonight. Is there any council member who would like to have questions or comments?
Mayor, I have a couple of questions.
Please go ahead, Councilmember Staley.
Well, first, I can tell you the community is so excited about the addition of these new stores and restaurants. We really are starved for these new businesses. And as you had mentioned, you know, we wish there was more here, and we don't understand why there hasn't been up to this point. So I'm very excited and want to say thank you on behalf of the community. What my first question is whether or not we can expect some more of this year, or are things on hold because of the pandemic?
You know, Counselor, that's a great question. Despite the pandemic, we have not seen a real slowdown in the retailers that are growing. Many of them, you know, Walmart for one is not growing. They're not doing any new neighborhood markets or super centers, and haven't since the pandemic started. And one of the reasons, and you know this, and the council knows this already, retail is changing from a traditional drive up, go in the store, purchase your goods and services, and take them back home, to a point of sale driven by this little device where you can order your pajamas while you drive down Interstate 40 on vacation. Walmart has shifted much of their focus and much of their budget to buy online, pick up in stores, and now home delivery. One of the things the pandemic has also done, and I think we're working on something for the community I'm not at liberty to talk about, but one of the retail categories that has really been spurred on by the pandemic is groceries in many different forms. Whereas in the past, many of our fruits and organic type groceries, we didn't really pay attention where those fruits or vegetables came from. But now American consumers are very interested in the validity of the health, you know, healthiness and the cleanliness and the sanitation required, especially in this type of environment. So to answer your question, I'm hopeful that we'll see some more brick and mortar stores. The ones that we mentioned earlier, there's, and I've told this to Hobby Lobby. Hobby Lobby is corporately headquartered about 100 miles from my office in Oklahoma City, and we talk to them almost daily. And I have chided them many times. You should have been there 5 years ago because this market's ready for you. And we're in a situation where one of the things that we're having to be concerned with, and I've shared this at length with Gary and Sylvia and Bennett, if you had some large footprint, empty, good buildings, some of these retailers would already be there. We are working with a group of developers that are at a national level who are working with and have worked with in many markets with this same lineup of tenants. And they were actually in town. Sylvia, remind me, was in November, I believe, when the group came. They're a Dallas-based group. They've recently they've got a couple of offices in California, but they're recently opened or beginning to open an office in Phoenix. So that will give them a a real platform into your market. We've educated them, and surprisingly, to sum up, your market is so open for a number of categories that it's really just getting the real estate situated and doing a partnership of some sort with the city to address some of the issues that these developers and these retailers have. We've got several that we think will come online, hopefully in 2021, certainly first, second quarter of 2022. And what Sylvia will tell you, when we started this, I shared with Sylvia and Bennett and Gary, this is usually a 36-month process from actually educating the national level retailers and developers on the strength of the market and then that investment coming. Not to mention a pandemic that none of us saw coming, having slowed some of that down. But I am very excited. And again, it speaks to your market that Cal Ranch and Harbor went ahead and pulled the trigger, even in a time but those were done in second generation real estate. Those were there, and we're able to the landowners were able to remodel and accommodate some of these. But much of what I'm talking about will be new construction.
This is all great news. Yes, thank you. You answered my question. I'll just throw in that, I've lived in this community my entire life, and we have always had to drive to Las Vegas to do our clothes shopping or to get certain gourmet ingredients. You're going regularly. I would love to cancel that trip and spend my money here and have my sales tax dollars go to
That's what we're after. And not only you spending your money there, but having these out of regional consumers, instead of going past you into Henderson or Las Vegas or going to Bullhead or to the other retail hub west of you, having them stop in Kingman.
We will welcome those dollars with open arms.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mayor Miles, I would like to make a comment and ask a question if I could.
Absolutely. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to thank you for your positive forecast for our community. I think that's really wonderful news. My question is, when you're talking to these prospects to come into our community, are they giving you any pushback on population? We've heard in several instances that, the population has to be right, and are you able to convince them that the area itself, not necessarily the population of Kingman proper, is definitely worth considering?
Yes, and your city limits population is kind of right at the kind of the threshold of some of these national tenants' population needs. But the region, proving up the regional market is no problem at all. There's any, Target, for one, is a retailer that should already be in Kingman. You've got the income, you've got the base, but Target has slowed down their growth in the United States. For those of you who are not really familiar with Target's journey for the last few years, they made a big run at doing Canadian stores and really found out that they didn't need to be in Canada. They needed to stay home. And so, but their model and their population needs, Kingman already fits. And when you add the regional pool to that, that's a non-issue. What we have heard many times, and it's not just Kingman, it's nationwide. Construction costs are escalating, real estate costs are high, and that has been some of the things. It's hard to build new construction for some of these tenants and get them to pay the rent it costs to make the economics work for the private sector investor. And that's why communities all over the country are doing public-private partnerships and incentivizing some of these by sharing some sales tax back or some other method, TIF financing or some other things. But your population is not an issue. The 30-minute drive time has plenty of unique personalities to come shop. This population's not an issue. Plus, there are millions of dollars in sales tax revenue passing in and out of King on the interstate that you're working downtown, and what you're doing along Andy Devine and some of those places that we saw and just marveled at when we were there a year ago. That's helping to pull some of those dollars off of the interstate that are just passing through into your local sales tax revenue as well.
Thank you. And just one last comment. I will say, I just kudos to the Economic Development team, Sylvia, Bennett, and Gary, being on the advisory commission. You are definitely working hard for Kingman and its citizens, and I recognize that you are very busy folks and you have the best interests for our community. So I commend you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. It's the team.
Thank you, Councilor Samali. Anyone else? Well, Mr. Hayes, I would like to thank you for your association with our economic development team and the city. I have one question. You know, we have worked over a number of years to secure development agreements for infrastructure development. Does that enter into your conversations with retailers, and does that spike interest in our future?
Political unity and consensus and a shared vision among the leaders of a community is a priceless and very visible sign that Kingman really understands the needs of the private sector and the investment that they make in the community. These retailers only have one issue. There's just one issue. Can we make money in Kingman? And the answer to that is obviously yes. And with the political body, the council, city manager, and this team of economic development professionals willing to do whatever it takes to get them in. I'll go back to something, and I don't want to give Sylvia a big head here, but when her openness to not only reach out, but to find out what their department, what the ED people can do to resolve some of the issues that all these tenants face. You know, they want a certain amount of signage. They want a certain amount. Really, access and visibility are the two things retailers harp on. And then for so many communities, it's tough to actually, after you make the investment, to get to market and actually open your doors. That's not what we find in Kingman. There's a willingness from the city departments, not only from the planning folks, but Sylvia kind of pushing these things through. Very good question. And I can tell you that I've seen developers read newspaper articles about political infighting and that type of stuff. And they look at that as a red flag that's going to cost them time, which equals money in their book. And in Kingman, we don't see any of that. There's a great shared energy and a consensus for growth that's really inviting. It really, really invites the private sector in. You guys have done a great job. And it's, you know, one of the things that you see along interstates across the country, and I've literally been in 39 states, the cleanliness and the appearance of your city is very inviting. I know there's certain areas of town that you probably don't want to shine a spotlight on. Every city has them. But what an outsider who visits Kingman sees is a really clean, modern, beautiful city in a real great setting. And I still remember, and I know this sounds corny, but the sunsets in Kingman are special. And I saw 3 of them and want to get back and see some more.
We've had spectacular sunsets with all our weather recently.
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And thank you, Ms. Schaefer, and all of the team, Mr. Kellogg, Mr. Bennett, Bradley, if he's on here. But yes, you're doing a great job. And just, I was on a radio show last week and was so proud to mention all the new businesses that were coming to Kingman, and just very excited.
Thank you very much.
Okay, without further ado then, we will have our final presentation on city regulations regarding living in an RV or trailer. Manager Foggin.
Thank you, Mayor. At our last council meeting, Councilor Nelson had asked a question about RV living and asked that we report on that at a future council meeting. And we were able to get that information compiled and a report put together. And so we're happy to provide that information for Councilor Nelson and the mayor and rest of the council. And so Amy has graciously put together some information that she would like to share so that you all know kind of what the regulations are for staying or dwelling in an RV or other type of vehicles.
Thank you.
Yes. So Amy, go ahead.
Thank you. I apologize, I don't have a charming Southern accent, but I'll try to make this as interesting as I can. So yeah, let me go ahead and try sharing my screen. We'll see if this works. Okay, can you guys see that? Can I just get a thumbs up if you can see it? All right. All right, so our office was asked to just put together a presentation for you guys on what sorts of ordinances are in place in both our city code and in the zoning code. I'm just gonna go through what we have in our code and then go through what's in the zoning code, and then Rich, who I think is still there, is gonna use a picture to explain where RVs can be parked and where they can't be parked. All right, so starting with our city code, if you look at section 7-77.1 subsection B, that reads storage and parking of unoccupied non-commercial recreational vehicles, boats, truck campers, camping trailers, travel trailers, and utility trailers. For the purposes of this section only, unoccupied means a vehicle that, while being parked or stored, is not used for the purposes of living, sleeping, or housekeeping. Unoccupied, non-commercial recreational vehicles, boats, truck campers, camping trailers, travel trailers, and utility trailers shall not be parked, stored, or located on city streets and residential zoning districts except as follows. A, such vehicles shall not be parked, stored, or located in that portion of a street or roadway that is in front of the primary residential structure for more than 72 consecutive hours. B, the vehicle or trailer must not be located on a residentially zoned lot or parcel of land that does not have a residential structure. And then C, the vehicle or trailer may be stored on developed residential properties as described in section 26.830 of the zoning ordinance of the city of Kingman. So that's the component of the zoning ordinance that ties in with our city code. So I put that one next. The zoning code section 26.830 pertains to the storage of RVs, boats, trailers, and campers. And that reads, notwithstanding any other provisions of this ordinance, unoccupied, non-commercial, recreational vehicles, RVs, boats, trailers, truck campers, camping trailers, utility trailers, and other similar vehicles shall be stored, parked, or located only as follows on residentially zoned properties. The first code is that such vehicles shall not be occupied for living, sleeping, or housekeeping purposes. So that is spelled out explicitly in the zoning code. And then the rest of it goes on to such vehicles shall be parked or stored on driveways and parking areas improved in accordance with section 22.700 subsection 3 of the zoning ordinance, unless the vehicle is located behind the front facade of the residential structure with a side or rear yard. 3, no portion of any such vehicle shall extend into or block any portion of the public sidewalk or street. And 4, not more than 2 such vehicles may be stored for each 20,000 square feet of a lot area, provided that no more than 4 such vehicles are stored on any residential lot. Another section of our city code that could pertain to this situation is the camping section. Camping is defined as the use of an area outdoors for living accommodation purposes and shall include, but is not limited to, erecting a tent or other type of shelter or laying down bedding material or both for the purpose of or in such a way as will permit it to be used for living accommodation purposes or for sleeping purposes, or parking, and this is the last part that applies, or parking a trailer, camper, or other vehicle for the foregoing purposes. And continuing on, camping on municipal property, no person shall camp on municipal property, public streets, or rights of way unless that property is specifically posted with signage allowing camping, or such use is otherwise expressly authorized by the city of Kingman. And then finally, camping on commercial property, no person shall camp on commercial property unless the property is a legally established and licensed trailer, RV, or mobile home park maintained and operated in accordance with the City of Kingman zoning code, or unless the person is legally authorized driver or passenger of a commercial vehicle with sleeping facilities parked at a legally authorized truck stop. And at this point, I have a graphic that Rich is going to come up and explain if he is still there.
Yes, this, excuse me, this graphic just basically visually explains what Amy just read for the residential areas, the allowances and restrictions on parking of RVs in residentially zoned areas. So the green areas on the map here are the areas that we do allow RVs, campers, trailers, that type of thing to be stored or parked either in a side yard, rear yard, or in a paved driveway in front of the house. We don't allow it stored in the front yards, off the driveways, or in the street beyond 72 hours. So that's basically what this graphic shows, and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Guys, thank you very much. That's incredibly detailed. I really appreciate it. And Mayor, I apologize. I jumped right in, and I'm very sorry about that. Since it was my question, I just kind of went right in.
I was about to call on you, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Guys, I really, you've got a great amount of work. You've put so much effort into it. My question isn't let's park and where we can park. What are we doing about people living in them? And that's not an answer that you necessarily gave me. So I get you read me all these ordinances, but what are we doing about that? And how are we helping that? Yes, every green area, you can park a trailer there. And believe me, I guarantee you, every green area has a trailer parked in it right now around Kingman, Arizona. If you really want to make your way through, you're going to see a few of those. So the ultimate goal and the ultimate question, I guess, is what are we doing about people that are living in it? And you see the extension cords and you see the 3 cars and you see everything else outside of those. That's where I was going with it. So thank you for everything you've done. Can you go one step further and answer that question? Please and thank you.
Councilor, Mayor, rest of the council, we were fortunate to have Chief Cooper here that I think can fill in some of those blanks for you.
Thank you, Manager Foggin.
Thank you.
Chief Cooper.
Mayor, council, thank you for the opportunity to speak to this. We do handle those complaints. If we see them and we notice them, then we do take proactive enforcement measures. So it's a quick answer, but we do enforce that. We do look into that, and we also, we ask for the community's input. In regards to the other RV ordinances, we take more of a balanced approach and complaint kind of driven, but when we do get notified of someone living in an RV, we do take an action. This past year with COVID, did allow perhaps some wiggle room, I would say, that's my word. We want to be reasonable with what's going on and people having to live somewhere. So that would be my answer right now.
Thank you, Chief. Councilor Nelson, did you have another question?
Just how long are we going to let that wiggle room go? And I apologize that I'm pushing like that, but my ultimate fear is that we're going to become a backyard trailer park community. And if you drive around town right now, you see it. And I'm worried. I'm legitimately concerned. And I think it's something that we need to pay attention to. And I don't know how do we let citizens, I don't know what to do. I don't know how we let citizens know. How do we tell them that there's a problem here? And they don't have that ability to be able to sleep in the campers more than 72 hours.
Understood.
Yeah, I guess, Counselor, the thing that I would say is, knowing that our folks are dealing with these, especially when we're notified of them or when we see them. One of the things that we definitely could take on as education piece is taking this information that Amy and Rich provided. And again, when we first adopted this, it's been a couple years, the RV parking issue, I think, as I recall, we tackled that in late 2018. It's probably time to do another education piece on what's allowed. And on the living part, the chief's absolutely right. We've actually had to curb enforcement a little bit, understanding that this pandemic is causing problems for people. But again, recognizing that you're right. Is this going to become a habit, or is this something that's going to be systemic over time? And we certainly can tackle that certainly with the help of the police department and coordinated effort with Colleen Haynes. We certainly can put some education pieces out that I think send the message that we're understanding of the situation, but explaining the rules as well.
I would love to hear that. My ultimate fear is that you can see more and more everyday homeless hanging on the streets, and what you're seeing every day is more and more people moving in with RVs and fifth wheels. And unfortunately, I don't want to become, Kingman doesn't deserve to become that bedroom community of broken people. And I'm sorry, I don't know a better way to explain it. I'm not politically correct. You all know that. You all know that Dina's the one person that's going to say it wrong whenever she says it. But you know what? I want Kingman to always stay above. And I'm worried. I'm terrified of where we're at. But that being said, I appreciate what you've said. I appreciate where you're going. And Amy, you did a fabulous job and you worked your little heart out and it was very obvious. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Mayor, one thing I would just add to that is the beauty of that is that we have the rules in place. So I think you're absolutely right in that if we didn't have the rules in place, that would definitely be a major concern. The fact that we've got the rules in place is a great step, and making sure that those rules apply and are applied I think falls definitely to us to make sure that what your fears, what you're seeing is curbed and does not become habitual. So we got the rules in place.
Thank you, Manager Foggin and Councilmember Nelson. Okay, any other comments from any other councilors? Then let's move on to announcements by mayor, council members, and city manager. And Manager Foggin, I'll start with you.
Thank you, Mayor. Don't have a lot. I will point out that we had a number of people show up after the meeting started, and I assume, based on some familiar faces, that they were here to hear about 6C. And in our preparation for item 6C, I just wanted to point out that a document was uploaded that was incorrect, so that was tabled and will be taken on at the next council meeting. Apologize, we found that this afternoon, so apologize for that. The other announcement that I have is just to remind the council, and well, first of all, if you've already had your interview for the 2021 council retreat and you've conducted that, thank you. If you've not, please make sure that you remember where that is on your calendar and talk to Patrick. We're excited about the retreat. It will be basically a follow-up to our wonderful strategic planning retreat that we had last year. So we'll just be basically walking through that and any new goals that or options that you would like to see the city taking for 2021, 2022. So with that, that's all the announcements I had, Mayor.
Thank you, Manager Foggin. Councilmember Walker.
I have nothing, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Samali.
Nothing for me, thank you.
Councilmember Scott Staley.
Yes, I have one announcement, actually on behalf of our city clerk. We were talking this week about the invocations, and she had mentioned that the city is always in need of volunteers to give the invocation at the beginning of the meeting. And so I thought I'd take this opportunity to just put that out there. And if you know somebody or the church you attend or you're friends with somebody, come across someone in the community, whatever it is, please ask them to volunteer. It'll make Annie's life easier.
Thank you so much. Good idea. Councilmember Mello.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Just quickly, continuing to thank staff and all those who work for the city and appreciate the good job they do. And even, last week we had a little bit of a snowstorm, and the chaos was controlled pretty good by our city staff, and we appreciate that. That's all.
Thank you. Well, I have a few announcements as usual, but especially building on the last topic that we discussed, there are many forums that I'm in which concern is expressed about an eviction tsunami. And this has been postponed several times through legislation, but there is still a concern. And of course, what we're witnessing, and it's in Kingman and it's everywhere else, that more and more people are losing homes or at risk of losing homes. And so I just watched the Board of Supervisor meeting yesterday, and I mentioned that because they accepted over $6 million that is now available will be available in Mojave County for rental and utility assistance for people at risk of not being able to pay their rent or losing their home if it's associated with COVID. There are certain criteria, but this is going to be done pretty quickly, and it's actually the questions that you might have should be targeted at the Mojave County Community Services. They're working with state DES, who has a portal, but this is a lot of aid that's coming out maybe by the middle of February to help people who are at risk in their rent. And I think this is a critically needed addition of funding that came from the last COVID assistance federal legislation. I also wanted to mention that they did approve their part of the partnership for our water agreement that we approved the last time. And so that is now secured with the county and the city and the USGS being on board for the next several years for our water agreement. And the last thing I wanted to mention is that the Board of Supervisors approved a letter of support for the development and construction of an advanced manufacturing center here in Kingman. And this is something that is really of great importance for our future, because MCC has developed an amazing proposal for an advanced manufacturing center that will serve the entire region. And I won't go into detail tonight, but we have issued a letter of support to the college and to Regina Cobb because MCC is seeking legislative support funding to help with this facility. There's also, it would be a public-private sector partnership. There are private sector developers who would be willing to assist. And so this could just set up a talent pipeline that is going to feed into our growth as an industrial and regional transportation, logistics, and manufacturing hub. So I was glad to see that they approved that support, and we'll keep an eye on that because it supports so many things that we need in the city for training, but also in the Achieve 60 work that is being done that could support a lot of attainment for people in our community of educational degrees. And toward that, I'm going to mention this too, because I'm really, I think the community needs to know what resources are available to help get a job, get training if you don't have it. And I had a meeting on the 29th with the Arizona at Work Community Partners Group, and I was just awed at all the work that they are doing. They are so busy helping people get trained for jobs, including jobs you can do from home. And that there was one that trains, that we have people in Kingman going through this training that's not that long a training, and they're getting good jobs like with Amazon, and they can work from home. But in addition, they're doing all kinds of cohorts for welding, certified production technician, caregivers, apprenticeship for construction. There's so much going on, and the people that need jobs, especially those that may have lost jobs in this pandemic and need to be reskilled, this is a place to go to help avoid the types of things that we were discussing earlier on having to lose your home. We don't want that. In fact, Joe Throneberry from Allied Forces said that right now they are 20 people short a day for jobs that they have. In addition to that, just one final thing. I want to thank the Rotary because I was a speaker at their One World reunion, which was a reunion with a Russian delegation of young people that we had met 9 years ago when they visited Kingman and were hosted here by families. And they had toured the country, and this was just a catch up to see how they were doing and see how their careers had gone. And the Rotary has been just phenomenal in carrying on programs like this. And I'll just mention that they said they had traveled through a lot of cities in our country, and they thought Kingman was the very best city that they ever visited, and they loved it. So we're hearing a lot of that tonight. I also, of course, attended Tri-City and Gamma, but nothing really to report there. So let us move on to council requests for future reports and updates. Hearing none.
All right, Mayor.
Yes.
I have one request for a future report.
Please go ahead.
Some time ago, and I think it's been quite a while, we were given a presentation about a fire station and a police substation in the East Bench, the cost of that and the need now and then the projected need. And I would really like to see that presentation again with some updated numbers and how we could potentially pay for that. Please.
Thank you. That's excellent. Manager Foggin?
Got it.
Thank you. Good idea. Yes. Any others?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, please, Vice Mayor.
sorry to interrupt. Did you ask Councilwoman Nelson about any comments? Did you, if she had any comments for tonight? Or
Yes, she
any
did.
requests?
Thank you. No, everything's fine. Thank you very
Oh,
much.
I'm sorry.
Okay, I just
I
wanted to make sure
missed
we got
you.
everybody.
I'm sorry. And I had even counted my names here. Okay, well, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn this meeting.
Have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all so very much. Have a good evening.
You too, Mayor.